My wife, Clara, was involved with a younger man, and she indulged his every whim. That boy, Leo, seemed to have a hold on her, preventing her from coming home some nights and even dictating that her friends shouldn't use my name when speaking to me. She, for her part, simply played along with his immature behavior. Even when he would have a fit of jealousy right in my presence, she would offer a placating smile and say, "Don't pay him any mind. You know how I am. I just like to have a little fun. I'm only humoring him for a while." I would smile and nod in return. On one such occasion, I replied, "In that case, why don't we commit to the performance completely? We could get a divorce." I imagine that would make him even more delighted. She seemed entirely convinced that even if we went through with a divorce, I would inevitably come back to her, begging for a reconciliation. However, the moment we stepped out of the government building after filing the initial papers, Clara's best friend, Sophie, approached me carrying a bouquet of flowers, a wide grin spreading across her face. "This is wonderful," she said. "Now I don't have to wait for you to be a widower to start pursuing you again." For Clara's birthday, I had invited all of her friends to our home for a celebration. It had been quite some time since she had allowed me to celebrate with her. To maintain appearances for the event, I gave our private chef the day off and personally prepared an entire feast. Her friends lavished praise on her, remarking on how fortunate she was to have married such a thoughtful and family-oriented husband, but Clara merely smiled without offering a word. "This soup is incredible," one friend commented. "Honestly, it's even better than what our chef at home makes. Clara, you are so lucky." Only Leo, the young man seated beside her, wore a scowl. He looked me over with a dismissive sneer, then proudly adjusted the collar of his shirt. A sudden quiet descended upon the dinner table. Everyone was surreptitiously glancing at Clara, waiting to see how she would react. She wore a faint, unreadable smile and remained silent. This only made Leo grow more smug, his gaze locking onto mine with an air of open defiance. It was Clara's best friend, Sophie, who finally broke the tense silence, shooting Leo a sideways look. "So, does this mean we should start calling you Mr. Sterling from now on?" she asked. Clara's expression immediately soured, but she couldn't react aggressively in front of her guests. She attempted to deflect with a weak joke to change the subject. After that awkward exchange, no one was really in the mood to stay. They all offered their goodbyes and departed. Leo whined for Clara to give him a ride home, and she eventually relented, grabbing her coat and wrapping her arm around his as they left. The party was finished. I was left by myself to deal with the remnants of the meal on the table. While I was in the kitchen washing the dishes, my phone buzzed with a text message. I opened it to see a photograph of Clara and Leo kissing passionately in his car. My hand began to shake, and I accidentally dropped a plate, which shattered on the floor. A sharp fragment of ceramic sliced my hand open. I clutched the bleeding wound and went to search for the first aid kit. There's an old saying that a cut on the finger is a pain in the heart, but strangely, my heart didn't ache at all. I supposed it had become numb a long time ago. I knew Clara wouldn't be returning home that night. This wasn't the first time it had happened, and I had grown accustomed to it. After a moment, I located a number in my phone's contacts and placed the call. "What's this? Calling to thank me for defending your honor today?" Sophie's voice was light and teasing. "No need to be so formal." I ignored her playful tone. Her professional specialty was business law. In the past, whenever the company faced legal trouble, Clara and I would consult with her. She had been an immense help to us when we were first starting out. Later, for Clara's sake, I had stepped back from active involvement in company matters, so it was always Clara or the corporate legal department who contacted her. My long tenure as a house husband had effectively isolated me from the professional world. As I scrolled through my contacts, I realized I didn't know a single professional I could call upon for this. Only Sophie was even remotely connected to that sphere. "I have a case for you," I said. "Are you interested?" "Is there something wrong with the company?" Sophie's playful tone vanished, replaced by the seriousness she always adopted when it came to work. "It's a divorce case," I replied. "Are you in?" Sophie rushed to my house that same night. She meticulously reviewed the draft of the divorce agreement I had put together, and then suddenly let out a laugh. "Ethan," she said, "are you trying to walk away with half of Sterling Enterprises?" I handed her a stack of documents. "I need your help filing for an asset freeze. Here are the bank statements, property deeds, and records of Clara's expenditures on Leo." All these years, Clara had seemed so certain that I was incapable of surviving without her that she hadn't taken any steps to transfer or protect her assets. I knew I had to move more quickly than she would. I had co-founded the company with her, so taking half of it was not an unreasonable proposition. The most important thing for me was to extricate myself from this situation as swiftly as possible. "I'm Clara's friend, you know," Sophie reminded me. "What gives you the impression that I'll help you?" I looked at her directly. "Because you're a good person." She chuckled. "Wow, playing the good person card already." She then took out a pen and made a few adjustments to the divorce agreement. "This isn't my exact specialty, but I'll connect you with the best divorce lawyer I know. I guarantee we will make this painful for Clara." I paused. "But you said you were her friend." Sophie looked up at me, holding my gaze for a long moment before she spoke. "Because I'm a good person." Clara didn't return home until noon the following day, her hair disheveled. I could only imagine what a wild night they must have had. "Have you eaten breakfast? Where's the housekeeper?" When I didn't respond, Clara seemed to register my displeasure. She produced a bouquet of flowers and a gift box, holding them out toward me. "Come on, don't be like this. You know how I am. I like to have my fun. I'm just humoring him. Look, Leo specifically told me to buy this for you. He's being so considerate, so can you just let this go?" Leo was constantly provoking me in this manner. If he took Clara out for dinner, he would insist she bring me a doggy bag of the leftovers. If she went shopping with him, he would have her pick up some small, insignificant gift for me. But if he was upset with her, he would forbid her from coming home at all. He did all of this to demonstrate one simple fact. If I wanted to see my own wife, I needed his express permission. It was as though I, her legal husband, required his charity just to have her presence in our home. I scoffed and tossed the flowers onto a nearby table. Clara was not happy. "Ethan, Leo already backed down. What more do you want from me?" This was her standard routine. After a night out with Leo, she would bring me a small token of apology, and then expect me to simply get over it and resume my role as Mr. Sterling. Inside the box was the latest designer watch from a luxury brand, its diamonds glittering under the light. But in that moment, a profound wave of exhaustion and weariness washed over me. I no longer had any desire to participate in these games with Clara. "Clara, let's get a divorce." The instant those words left my mouth, Clara's hand, which had been buttoning her shirt, froze in place. She looked up at me, seemingly convinced I was making a joke. "Because Leo made a silly comment yesterday. Since when did you become so petty?" I looked at her casual, dismissive attitude and let out a soft sigh. So in her mind, all my years of silent tolerance were simply me being petty. "Since you enjoy humoring people so much, wouldn't divorcing me be an even better way to appease him?" Clara's smile vanished completely. and a flicker of impatience crossed her features. "All right, stop messing around. I'm just playing with him, you know that." I stepped back from her. "You think it's all fun and games, and that I'll always be here waiting to clean up the messes you make? Clara, I'm not your pet. You can't just coddle me when you're in the mood and cast me aside when you're not." I sidestepped her attempt to touch my arm. Her hand was left hanging in midair, and her expression turned completely cold. "Ethan, in all our years of marriage, have I ever once mistreated you? Haven't I provided you with the very best of everything? And you want to divorce me over this little thing?" A little thing, again. It appeared that all of my feelings were just trivial matters in her eyes, things that could be easily smoothed over with a small gift. I didn't want to argue with her any longer. I turned the agreement I had prepared to the final page. "Sign it." She stared at me coldly. "Fine, a divorce. Schedule an appointment with my assistant." Her tone was as frigid as if she were discussing a business transaction. How utterly absurd. A husband and wife discussing the end of their marriage, and I was expected to book an appointment with her assistant. I knew she was placing a bet, betting that I would back down at the last second, just as I had done countless times before. But this time, I didn't provide her with the reaction she was anticipating. Seeing my unyielding resolve, Clara stormed out of the room, slamming the door shut behind her. After she had gone, it felt as though all the strength had been drained from my body. I collapsed onto the sofa. So, even my serious proposal for a divorce was just another temper tantrum in her view. She had never once taken my words seriously. When she was happy, it meant I was being obedient. When she was not, it meant I was throwing a fit. Then again, why would the person benefiting from an arrangement ever wish to communicate about changing it? Not long after Clara left, my phone vibrated with a new message. It was a photo from Leo. He was at a high-end boutique and had sent me a picture of the display counter. "See anything you like? I'll have Clara bring it back for you next time. Her taste is just terrible. I heard you didn't like the last watch. It takes a man to know a man. You pick, and I'll give you some advice." He even included a smiley face emoji at the end. In the past, these kinds of blatant provocations would have kept me awake all night, stewing in my own anxiety. Now, I just found them childish and laughable. Leo was racking his brain simply to get a reaction out of me. "No need," I typed back. "The designer sends the latest pieces directly to my home." As a co-founder of Sterling Enterprises, even though I held no real power in the company anymore, I still retained the title of Mr. Sterling. It would be foolish not to take advantage of the associated perks. The major luxury brands still sent their newest collections to my house for me to select from first. What Leo was seeing in the store was merely what was left over after people like me had already made our choices. They wouldn't even display the more exclusive or popular items to a regular customer like him. At the top of our chat, the typing indicator appeared and disappeared repeatedly. But in the end, no new message came through. The thought of him fuming on the other side of the screen made me want to laugh. Clara hadn't been home or made any contact for days. Sophie, on the other hand, kept appearing at my door, using the excuse of having new information to discuss. Clara likely assumed I was just using the divorce as a threat to express my frustrations, and consequently hadn't taken any measures to protect their shared assets. Furthermore, with Sophie having served as the company's legal counsel for so many years, it was a simple matter for her to get a comprehensive overview of Clara's financial situation. "Well done, Ethan," she said one evening, handing me a folder. "Your taste in women isn't half bad after all." I looked at the detailed list she had compiled. I stood to walk away with a very substantial sum of money. "My judgment of women has always been terrible," I replied quietly. At my words, Sophie fell silent. I formally scheduled an appointment with Clara's secretary. On the day of the signing, as soon as I walked into the hall, I saw Leo standing next to Clara, a pained expression on his face. I walked straight past him toward the window, but Clara suddenly grabbed my wrist. "It's not too late to change your mind." Leo chimed in, "Yeah, did I do something to give you the wrong impression? I came here today specifically to explain." As he said this, his hand was still tugging on the hem of Clara's shirt. I didn't even bother to look at him, and signed the documents directly. Seeing my lack of hesitation, Clara seemed both angry and defiant as she picked up the pen and signed her name as well. "There's a 1-month cooling-off period," she said, her voice tight. "We'll come back to get the final certificates then. Ethan, don't you regret this?" I finally let out a sigh of relief and left the government building without looking back. Sophie was waiting for me outside. "Everything go smoothly? Congratulations." Clara, who had followed me out, was stunned. "What are you doing here?" Sophie smiled sweetly. "Oh, didn't you know, Clara? Ethan is my client now." Sophie had told me she would find me a divorce lawyer, and she did, after she spent a few days shadowing one and then appointed herself as my attorney. She claimed it was about keeping business in the family. "Sophie, did you and Ethan team up to fool me?" Clara's fists were clenched so tightly her face was alternating between red and white with rage. "Clara, some things, once they are lost, can never be found again," Sophie said, not directly answering the question. Clara pressed her lips together. "What's there to be afraid of? He's just throwing a tantrum. He'll probably come crawling back to me before the cooling-off period is even over." Sophie just gave a wry smile. "Did you know he's allergic to lily pollen? That bouquet of lilies you sent him the other day is probably still in the entryway." Clara froze on the spot. As I got into the car, I saw Leo hiding behind Clara, flashing me a peace sign, his face triumphant as if declaring a great victory. Within 7 days, I had moved all of my belongings out of the villa. I realized there was almost nothing of Clara's left in the house anyway. She had another home elsewhere, after all. The assets hadn't been divided yet, and, without the Mr. Sterling title to fall back on, I needed to support myself. I also had plans to divest my shares from Clara's company, so I sent out a few resumes, accepted a job at a company, and planned to get a feel for the current market. Just 3 days into my new job, the director burst into the office and announced to everyone, "Ms. Sterling is here early. Project team, grab your materials and get to the conference room." The moment the conference room door opened, Clara noticed me. She sneered and tossed a file she hadn't even looked at in my direction. "Redo it." I gathered the papers with a blank expression. Of course, considering Ms. Sterling's reading difficulties, I'll be sure to prepare a version with pictures and graphs next time. After the meeting, I was called into the boss's office and reprimanded. "What is wrong with you? How dare you talk to Ms. Sterling like that? Tomorrow, you will go to her office with a gift and apologize, or you can forget about your next 6-month salary." My hand tightened around my employee ID card. "The labor laws state—" "Don't give me that," he cut me off. "Sterling Enterprises is our biggest client. If you offend her and she cancels the contract, do you want the whole company to be out on the street?" I nodded, not bothering to argue further, and turned to leave. "Ethan," a cold voice said from behind me. It was Clara. "Is this the kind of life you lead without me? Is this what you meant when you said you wouldn't regret it?" I turned back to her. "I haven't forgotten this kind of life. Has Ms. Sterling?" Clara's face changed. She grabbed my wrist and pinned me against the wall. "Do you have to bring up that old crap?" I understood immediately. Our past was something Clara hated discussing. Back then, we were pushed around by a client, forced to drink 3 bottles of liquor at a business dinner. After paying the bill, we had to help each other get to the emergency room. To please another client, we volunteered to walk their dog for them. On the way home that day, Clara calculated that the dog's monthly food bill was higher than our own. Every time she saw me, a witness to her past struggles, she felt humiliated. But Leo was new to the world, and his eyes were always filled with adoration and worship for her. Only when she was with Leo did Clara feel truly secure and confident. "Ethan, I told you," she whispered, squeezing the back of my neck just a little too hard. "You'll come crawling back." I met her gaze. Ms. Sterling can wait and see. The next morning, I ran into Clara at the company entrance again. It was strange. I used to go weeks without seeing her, but now that we were about to divorce, she seemed to be constantly around. "You can either come back and be Mr. Sterling, or you can live hand to mouth," she stated. "The choice is yours." I ignored her, scanned my ID, and went inside. Sure enough, HR immediately announced that my punishment was no longer a 6-month pay cut, but direct termination. I didn't want to make things difficult for my boss. This job was just a stepping stone for me anyway, so I signed the papers immediately. While I was packing my things, I heard a commotion in the office. Many of my male colleagues were excitedly discussing something. My boss came over with Sophie, and I finally understood what all the excitement was about. "Ethan, my man, you know someone this important and you didn't say so sooner?" Clara was surprised to see Sophie arrive. "What are you doing here?" "Have you forgotten, Ms. Sterling? Ethan is my client. If you insist on using a signed contract as a threat to harm his interests, I won't hesitate to countersue on behalf of my client's new company." Sophie stood in front of me, a smile on her face, but her words were dripping with menace. Looking at her resolute back, I felt a sense of security I hadn't experienced in a very long time. "Sophie, what are you trying to say?" "Ms. Sterling, Ms. Chen, we're all respectable people here," my boss interjected, not daring to offend Clara, trying to mediate. "Let's not make a scene over a junior employee. We all have to work together in the future." As the two women faced off, Clara turned her glare on Sophie. "Sophie, I'm warning you. Ethan is my man. Don't get any ideas you shouldn't." I stepped forward. "I'm nobody's man. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning at City Hall. Don't be late, Ms. Sterling." Clara shot me a look, her face ashen. She clenched her jaw so tightly the muscles in her temples bulged. "Fine. See you there." Sophie offered to drive me home, and I didn't refuse. The subway during rush hour was a nightmare. She was quiet the whole way, until we were stopped at the last traffic light before my house. As we waited, she suddenly spoke. "You used up all your swagger on me back then. What happened to it now?" I stared silently out the window. Sophie and I were college sweethearts. Like all campus romances that eventually fade, our story ended at graduation. She chose to continue her studies abroad, while I just wanted a stable life and remained in the city. The beginning of our long-distance relationship was filled with a unique kind of romance. She would tell me endless stories about the interesting things she encountered. The first thing I did every morning was check the string of messages she'd sent overnight and reply to each one. But the time difference and the sheer distance eventually carved a chasm between us. It felt like we were just mechanically reading and replying to texts every day. She was busy with her studies, and I was buried in work. The periods of no contact grew longer. Finally, one day, I opened our chat and saw the last message was from over a month ago. I tentatively typed, "Should we break up?" 10 hours later, I received her reply. "Okay." To give the relationship a proper send-off, I called a few friends and went to a bar. That's how I met Clara. After that came the cliché story of falling in love, over time. I stood by Clara's side, step by step, as she got to where she is today. Life has a twisted sense of humor. Before our wedding, Clara mysteriously told me she wanted me to meet a friend, someone who had flown back from abroad specifically for the occasion. I pushed open the door to the private room and saw Sophie sitting next to her. We both tacitly agreed not to bring up the past. When she learned that Clara and I wanted to start a business, she was incredibly supportive and even offered to be our legal counsel. "Yeah," I said quietly, still looking out the window. Maybe I used up all my swagger back then. Another silence fell between us. When we reached my house and I got out of the car, Sophie called out to me. "Ethan, you're the client now. You're allowed to be bossy with your lawyer." Clara strode into City Hall the next day. I glanced at my watch and chuckled. 47 minutes late. Ms. Sterling's sense of time is certainly modern. Leo had a tantrum. He swallowed some sleeping pills. "Oh? Then you should be at the crematorium. You've come to the wrong place." She looked pained. "Ethan, do we really have to get a divorce? I promise I won't let Leo bother you anymore. We can go back to how things were, okay?" I handed her my wedding ring, not wanting to get dragged into any further discussion, and signed the final papers. "Clara, sign it. Don't make me hate you." She stared at me, speechless, for a long moment before finally picking up the pen with a trembling hand and signing her name. When I received the divorce certificate, I opened it and took a deep breath. It was finally over. Years of my youth and love, all reduced to this small booklet. "Ethan, from now on, Congratulations on the divorce, my client. I'm a pretty reliable divorce lawyer, aren't I?" Sophie walked in, holding a bouquet of fresh balloon flowers. Clara stared at her, stunned. "Didn't you say he was allergic to pollen?" Sophie grinned. "I was just kidding. I didn't think you actually wouldn't know if he was allergic or not. No wonder you're the ex-wife now." Clara's eyes widened. She grabbed Sophie by the collar and slammed her against the wall. "Sophie, you backstabbing bitch! And I thought you were my friend. Is this how you treat your friends?" Sophie pushed Clara off, smoothed out her collar, and then grinned at me, her eyes crinkling. "Who backstabbed who isn't exactly clear. This is great," she said, repeating her words from before. "Now I don't have to wait for you to be a widower to start pursuing you again." The day after the divorce was finalized, I used the assets I received to register a new company. "Nice feng shui in your office, Mr. Sterling," Sophie commented, leaning against the doorframe, facing Sterling Enterprises headquarters directly. "Are you planning to go head-to-head?" "You're quite the expert on feng shui, Ms. Chen," I replied, looking at the sign above my company's entrance. It felt like a ship that had been drifting at sea had finally found its anchor. My job search over the past month had been a temporary measure, a way to reacquaint myself with the market after so many years out of the workforce. "Mr. Sterling, as the company grows, you're going to need professional legal counsel." "A top lawyer like you? I can't afford that. My budget isn't that big." Sophie raised an eyebrow with a playful smile, her eyes shining like stars. "I'm free." "Nothing free is ever cheap," I retorted. "Last time with the divorce, you just learned on the fly from another lawyer. You're not planning to use me for practice again, are you?" "Mr. Sterling, you know best just how professional I am," she said, taking 2 steps closer, her warm breath brushing against my skin. "Besides, in certain areas, I'm definitely worth the highest price. Care to find out?" "Your trouble," I said, reaching out to gently pinch her nose. I knew exactly how professional she could be. She let out a soft laugh, but this time her smile held a hint of seriousness. "Ethan, can we get back together?" Something deep inside me stirred. What happened back then wasn't anyone's fault. Our love had just been worn down by time and distance. "Right now," I said honestly, "I don't really have the headspace for that. Wait for me, okay?" Sophie nodded. "I just want you to know, when I came back all those years ago, it wasn't just for Clara's wedding. When I heard she was getting married, I suddenly missed you so much. I just wanted to get back to your side as fast as I could. I had decided then and there, after the wedding, I was going to find you. Whether you came abroad with me or I stayed here with you, we would never be apart again." "But what happened?" She laughed, a self-deprecating sound. "But thankfully, you're finally rid of that bitch. Ethan, I will wait for you." I looked at Sophie's earnest face and finally nodded. Sophie was the best civil and commercial lawyer in the city. No matter the cost, having her as a consultant would be worth it. "Deal. But let's be clear. Once you're in my company, you play by my rules." Sophie took my hand, her palm warm. "Of course. But privately, I hope Mr. Sterling will give me a chance to treat you to dinner as a celebration for the new company." I pulled my hand back, the tips of my ears starting to burn again. "Let's get your onboarding paperwork done first." With resources from old classmates and friends, the new company quickly got on its feet. 3 months later, I received an invitation to a high-profile industry gala hosted by the city's Chamber of Commerce. It was a great opportunity to expand my network and raise the company's profile, so naturally I wouldn't miss it. After much pestering from Sophie, I finally agreed to let her be my +1. As we entered the venue, I caught a glimpse of Clara and Leo in the crowd. Clara's face instantly turned cold, her gaze shooting toward us like daggers. "Ethan, are you two playing games with me?" I was just coming out of the restroom when I ran into Clara waiting outside. Her face was pale, and she didn't look happy. "You're joking, Ms. Sterling. Are you that fun to play with?" "Joking? I've looked into your history with Sophie. Are you telling me nothing shady happened between you two behind my back all these years?" I slapped her across the face. I couldn't help it. My hand was itching. "There's nothing but clean history between me and Sophie. Don't project your own filth onto everyone else." Victoria was still fuming. "If she hadn't been in your ear whispering poison, would you have thrown a fit and demanded a divorce over a few words from Leo after all these years?" Faced with her irrational accusations, I was at a loss for words. That familiar feeling of powerlessness, which I had just escaped, came rushing back. "Clara, I asked for a divorce for one reason and one reason only. You cheated on me." She stammered for a few seconds, then blocked my way as I tried to leave. "Ethan, I've been thinking these past few days. We were both too impulsive about the divorce. Since you and Sophie have a past, let's just call it even. You come back, and we can go on living our lives together." "Move." "I won't. Ethan, I know I was wrong, but I was just messing around with Leo. How could we throw away so many years of history just like that? You have to give me a chance to fix this." No matter how much I refused, she clung to me relentlessly. Just then, a commotion erupted from the crowd, followed by a sharp male voice scolding a waiter. "Can't you watch where you're going? You spilled wine on my expensive suit. Can you even afford to replace this?" Everyone's attention was drawn to the source of the noise. I went to see what was happening and found Leo lecturing a waiter who had accidentally spilled a drink. The Chamber of Commerce president frowned, and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Everyone at the gala was a person of standing. They would maintain their composure over a simple spill. Everyone immediately recognized him as Clara's date, and she looked mortified. She quickly rushed over to pull Leo away. Seeing me and Clara approaching from the same direction, Leo turned his anger on her. "Why were you with him? What were you two doing?" Clara hissed at him. If he made a scene here, he wouldn't be the only one losing face. I just watched them with a calm smile, maintaining a dignified demeanor that stood in stark contrast to Leo's boorish behavior. Having been a homemaker for so long, I was a new face to most people here. They grew curious and started asking around. Within half an hour, the story of my relationship with Clara and Leo had spread throughout the entire gala. Leo had made a complete fool of himself. For the rest of the evening, I could feel Clara's gaze on me. I deliberately ignored her, working the room seamlessly with Sophie at my side. Later, Leo followed me when I went to the lounge area alone. "Ethan, don't think your little tricks will win Clara back from me," he glared, his eyes filled with anger and confusion. "You showed up with Sophie today just to make Clara jealous, to make her come back to you, didn't you? You're disgusting." I chuckled softly. "I used to see you as a rival, a major threat. I really gave you too much credit. Leo, flies are only drawn to cracked eggs. You're the fly, and Clara is the rotten egg. But I have a thing for cleanliness, and I don't want to get near either of you." His face turned beet red. I raised my wine glass, lightly clinked it against his, and turned to leave. "Have fun, Mr. Harrison." The business world is a battlefield, and gossip travels fast. Apparently, this was the third time Clara had restructured her company's HR policies this month. The moment we split, she had eagerly hired Leo. But he was insatiable, constantly trying to bring his own relatives into the company. He complained that the old CFO kept rejecting his expense reports, so he wanted to replace him with his uncle. His buddy got scammed by a girl, so he made Clara hire him as the receptionist. Sophie shook a folder in her hand. "This is the 12th resume this month from a former Sterling Enterprises employee. Your ex-wife traded flexible hours for a military-style management system. I heard 5 employees from the project department submitted their resignations this morning." Just then, a call came in from a headhunter. "Mr. Sterling, the R&D director at Sterling Enterprises just tore up his non-compete agreement. He said he'd rather pay the penalty than not come work for us." R&D work requires creative inspiration. Forcing strict office hours on them was counterproductive. On top of that, Leo announced the cancellation of the special employee care initiatives I had established, and morale plummeted. Sterling Enterprises, once known for its human-centric culture, was now blacklisted by job seekers. With no new talent coming in, old employees were resigning in droves. Scandals involving Leo's relatives engaging in favoritism also came to light, making Clara the talk of the town. By the time she realized what was happening, most of the remaining employees were just deadwood, coasting until they could quit. At the bidding presentation for the new Smart City project, Clara burst into the conference room, her tie askew. She looked at me on the stage, mid-presentation, and seemed to freeze. "Ms. Sterling, is being late now part of Sterling Enterprises' new corporate culture, right alongside your military-style management?" She looked embarrassed and lowered her head as she took a seat. Her phone suddenly rang, and Leo's voice blared through the speaker. "Clara, my cousin got yelled at by a client. You need to come back and stand up for him." Clara's knuckles turned white as she clutched her phone. "I'm in a bidding presentation." "I don't care. You promised you'd take care of my family. Are you with Ethan again?" I pointed the laser pen at the big screen. "Does Ms. Sterling need some privacy?" The room erupted in laughter. Clara's face flushed with shame, and she had no choice but to get up and take the call outside. From the end of the hallway, I heard the sound of something heavy hitting a wall, followed by her low growl into the phone. "It's not the first time he's screwed up. The entire industry now knows I put a loser who couldn't even finish his senior project in charge of a department. What more do you want from me?" By the time she finished her call and returned, I had already completed my presentation. The clients in the audience were quietly discussing my proposal, nodding with smiles. Clara was clearly not in a good mood. She listened distractedly through the rest of the presentations and made several mistakes when it was her turn. After the bidding, I chatted with a few executives, packed up my files, and was about to head back to the office when Clara blocked my path. "Ethan, can we talk?" She looked exhausted, with faint dark circles under her eyes. "Ethan, have you been doing okay?" She reached out to take my hand, but I sidestepped her. "If you have something to say, Ms. Sterling, just say it." She bit her lip. "It's been a while since I've seen you work. You're very professional." "My professionalism doesn't need your judgment, Ms. Sterling." This was potentially my company's first major project, so I was thoroughly prepared. Julia had helped me rehearse countless times. The entire presentation was seamless. "Ethan, let's talk. There's a restaurant nearby. You haven't had lunch yet, right? I'm sorry, Ms. Sterling, but my ride is here." Sophie rolled down the car window and waved at me. I gestured that I was heading over, but Clara grabbed my arm. "Ethan, you haven't had lunch yet." "No need for you to worry, Ms. Sterling," Sophie called out, getting impatient. She got out of the car, came to my side, and physically separated me from Clara. "Sophie, this is between me and Ethan. It has nothing to do with you." "Ms. Sterling, you're just Ethan's ex-wife. This has very little to do with you." Clara ignored Sophie and came forward to grab my hand again, her face full of regret. "Ethan, I was wrong before. I did such a stupid thing. Seeing you today, I finally realized what a ridiculous mistake I made." Looking at her haggard state, if it weren't for her neat clothes, she would have looked like a beggar. I let out a soft laugh. It was truly pathetic. "It's okay, Ms. Sterling. Didn't you fall for him because he was so refreshingly direct and cute?" The reason she gave me back then was that Leo was a breath of fresh air. She said she hadn't felt that kind of passion in a long time. The wild, unrestrained Leo held a fatal attraction for her, but she didn't understand that to have a life, you first have to build it. I used to take care of everything, which gave her the freedom to chase those empty thrills. Now that she was worn down by his drama, she naturally remembered how mature and dependable I used to be. "Ethan, I'm sorry. Please come back, okay? We'll have a good life together. I won't get tangled up with Leo anymore." "Clara, I'm not your safe harbor. We're just two separate ships on a vast ocean. When our routes aligned, we sailed together. But you took a wrong turn, and now we'll never cross paths again." "Ethan, just let me explain. Does Ms. Sterling have a reason for not letting go?" Sophie suddenly pulled me into her arms, looking at Clara with a defiant glint in her eye. A flash of rage shot through Clara's eyes. "Sophie, you have no right to speak here. If it weren't for you meddling, how could Ethan and I have ended up like this? With your rotten character, you don't need anyone else to mess things up for you," Sophie shot back. "Always pushing the blame onto others. Where's that confidence you had at the restaurant, Ms. Sterling, when you were so sure Ethan would be begging you to remarry him within 3 days?" "You're lying." Clara grabbed my hand, trying to explain. "Ethan, that's not what I meant. I was just angry. Don't listen to her trying to drive a wedge between us." "It doesn't matter anymore." I pulled my hand away and sprayed it with hand sanitizer in disgust. Then I walked straight to the car, glancing back at Sophie. "Are you planning to make your boss drive himself?" Sophie immediately scurried over, but after getting in the car, she kept muttering to herself. "So you only see me as an employee?" she finally said reluctantly. "Aren't you an employee?" "Just an employee?" Seeing her acting uncharacteristically childish, I found it amusing and chuckled without answering. At a red light, she quietly reached over and took my hand. I didn't pull away. One day, after a client meeting, I was having lunch at a coffee shop near the office when Leo burst in, his fingernails nearly poking my nose. He had dark circles under his eyes and looked utterly exhausted. "Ethan, you bastard! Seducing Clara behind my back! Now even my uncle got fired because of you!" His shrill voice made the couple at the next table pull out their phones. I calmly put a forkful of pasta into my mouth. "Your uncle was groping a male intern on his first day," I replied, without batting an eye. "Who in the industry doesn't know that? He was doing him a favor. A 20-year-old kid wearing skinny jeans to work is obviously trying to hook a boss. If you hadn't interfered, Clara would never have been so heartless. You homewrecker!" Leo shrieked, grabbing my wrist with a crushing grip. The glass door was thrown open, and Clara strode into the coffee shop. She slapped Leo's hand away from me. "I told you not to come looking for Ethan!" Leo stumbled backward, knocking over the adjacent table. Drinks and food spilled all over him. He suddenly grabbed a butter knife and pointed it at Clara. "Ever since that gala, you've been like a ghost, staring at his picture at 3 a.m, scribbling his name all over your notebooks during meetings. Clara, what do you take me for?" Sophie also walked into the cafe, stepping in front of me protectively. What could he be? The shameless other man, of course. "Mr. Harrison, do I need to remind you of the legal penalties for public disturbance?" The onlookers finally realized that Leo, the aggressor, was the homewrecker. In the end, he was taken away by the police after a bystander called them. Clara stared at the red mark on my wrist and, after a long pause, finally spoke. "Ethan, I'm sorry." "No need to be, Ms. Sterling. Just focus on cleaning up your own house." "Ethan, are you concerned about me?" Seeing her timid expression only annoyed me. I just shook my head with a smile, picked up my bag, and left. That day, Leo's outrageous claims caused a massive stir online. People quickly dug up all of Sterling Enterprises' dirty laundry. Combined with months of unhealthy finances and relentless bad press, the company was on the verge of collapse. On the day Clara declared bankruptcy, she came to my office, holding out a key as if it were a treasure. "Ethan, I used the last of my money to buy back the old apartment we used to live in. I just had it redecorated. You always said you missed those days." "I'm sorry, Ms. Sterling, but I've gotten used to living in big houses now. I'm not really a fan of small places anymore." I had no interest in reminiscing, and pushed the key back. "What a coincidence," Sophie said, walking into the office just then, and handing Clara a gold-embossed invitation. "The 8th of next month is an auspicious day. Be sure to come." 3 days earlier, she had proposed to me. In an instant, Clara's face went deathly pale. "Ethan, are you really going to marry her?" "You've misunderstood, Ms. Sterling. This isn't my invitation." Just as a glimmer of hope appeared in her eyes, I took the invitation from her hand and tossed it back to Sophie. "I told you I don't like this design. It's too tacky. What's wrong with your taste? Pick another one." Neither Sophie nor I noticed when Clara left. Planning a wedding is a hassle. Sophie and I argued constantly, then constantly compromised, as if we were making up for all the fights we never had. Clara didn't come to the wedding. Even her closest friends just sighed when her name was mentioned. I later heard that after the company went bankrupt, Leo relentlessly hounded Clara for money. When he found out she had spent her last funds on that old apartment, he went there and started smashing things. Clara snapped, screaming that he was destroying our memories, and attacked him. In the ensuing struggle, they both fell from the small building's balcony. Leo's head hit a nail sticking out of some construction debris, and he died instantly. Clara was also injured. Although she was saved, she was left paralyzed and bedridden with no one to care for her. Once she was out of critical condition, she would face a court's judgment. One day, while accompanying Sophie to the hospital for a prenatal checkup, I passed by a hospital room and instinctively paused when I saw a familiar face inside. The woman in the bed, Clara, also saw me through the glass pane on the door. She became very agitated. The heart monitor beeped erratically as she seemed to struggle to get up, but she couldn't move. All she could do was stare out, her eyes fixed on me, as if afraid I would disappear. In the end, I didn't enter that room. Sophie came running over with the report, excitedly throwing her arms around me. She pointed to the tiny bean sprout-sized embryo on the ultrasound, showing it off as she kissed me several times. In the hospital bed, Clara cried heartbrokenly, her eyes squeezed shut, and her mouth open like a child's. It was a pity there was no one left to even wipe her tears. I felt nothing. An irrelevant person could no longer stir any emotion in me. So, can I apply for a raise starting next month? Back home, Sophie started fawning over me, giving me a shoulder rub. You've barely been working here, and you're already asking for a raise? You know exactly how long I've been working, don't you? You're such a flirt. You can't say things like that anymore. It's bad for the baby's development. Yes, whatever the boss says is right. With that, Sophie snuggled into my arms like a little kitten. In that moment, I felt incredibly happy. My company grew larger and larger, and of course, I gave Sophie her raise. At the end of the month, I withdrew all my salary in cash and counted it over and over again. The truth was, I had earned more than enough at the law firm before, and my savings were substantial. My monthly salary was just pocket money to me. Honey, this proves it, she said, nestling against me. A man who's good to his wife finds success, but one who mistreats her loses everything. You and your smooth talk, I murmured, gently stroking her growing belly. The me of today gets excited over every brilliant project proposal, gets my heart racing over the surprises Sophie plans, and rejoices with every kick from the baby. This life is very, very good.